No, I'm not anti-technology, and I'm not primitivist. I have, the I have the iPhone. I'm recording this video on QuickTime on my MacBook Pro. I live in a fairly large house. I have a lot of the technologies that most people today do. I am someone who's interested in ecology, and I'm interested in the skills the human being requires um, to get by in the natural world. I do follow a contemporary Blackfoot way of life, which includes a lot of indigenous knowledge and practice from the past when a lot of these technologies we have today weren't available. And I teach those skills to adults. Um, I was trained academically in anthropology. I'm not a physical anthropologist, I'm a cultural anthropologist by that training, but I'm I am really interested in what our ancestors might have been like. Um, Sometimes I wish I could get a glimpse of what our ancestors were like before we made whatever it was that was our last really big technological turning point that's affecting our species. You see, I think I'm a long term thinker. I guess is what is one aspect of my personality that informs a lot of my philosophical perspectives. I'm always thinking long term. I'm thinking long term in terms of ecology, and I'm thinking about the future that we're setting up for our grandchildren, great grandchildren, their grandchildren. Um, I know every generation has its legacy up to a certain point, and then there's a forgetting point where you don't know what happened before. If things are changing too rapidly. I mean, if things are the same way for a long, long period of time, you can know hundreds of generations and what their life was like. But when things are changing as rapidly as they are in today's world, we don't really know. We can't really identify with what life was like, 7 generations ago or whatever. One of the Something that comes to mind for me a lot of times um, is my dependency on this technology, this one right here on my face. Um, Without these things or some kind of equivalent like contact lenses, I like to wear contacts a lot more than I do these glasses. But without these, I'm blind, right? Um, for all intents and purposes, I'm blind without some kind of vision corrective aid. Or if I had, the bucks to go get radiokeratotomy and get a piece of my eyeball sliced off so that I could more or less permanently fix the shape of my eye, then without that, I have to wear some kind of visual aid where I can't see. Um, in the past, someone like myself that couldn't see it was not going to survive in this world before the invention of glasses. And these glasses, I don't know, I never looked up when they were invented or anything like that, but I don't suspect it was long ago. I don't suspect it was more than a couple, 200-300 years ago that glasses came about. Maybe a little bit longer, I don't know, but I know it hasn't been that long. And I think this little technology right here is changing the human race for the worse. I think it's weakening our species. The reason I think that is because, like I'm saying, I wouldn't have survived in the past where vision corrective lenses weren't available. There's no way I would survive. I couldn't hunt. Um, I'd be, dead meat in any kind of combat situation, and um, or in any kind of encounter with a predator. And basically, I could not feed myself, because if you don't have your eyes as a human being, you're out of luck. So much of what we depend on is our eyes. So I wouldn't have survived in the past, um, and not surviving, of course, that I wouldn't have had children, or at least as many if I lived long enough to have any. And so the genetic, code that would be passed to give another generation my nearsightedness would not be passed, right? And so I think, as soon as this little technology came into play, um, we have ever since been weakening the human species, because more and more people need glasses. More and more people need corrective lenses. More and more people's eyes are getting worse and worse and worse. And it's been a very short time, but I think, a good percentage of the population of humans needs vision correction at this point, in just whatever few hundred years that this technology has been around. And so it's contributing to overpopulation, of course, but it's also contributing to a flaw in our genetic code that's being passed and becoming more widespread, and such that, maybe in the future, I don't know, but maybe in the future we won't be able to see, or we will require some kind of vision surgery in order to be able to see right off the bat. Maybe that's not that far away. Maybe that's another few hundred years away before we need that, before we require a surgery right after birth to fix our eyes just enough so we can see. So if that kind of massive impact on us can occur with just this little technology that I'm wearing on my face, imagine what all the other technologies that we're using to enhance supposedly our lives or our health. Imagine what they're doing to weaken the human species. I've given this this idea actually some thought for a number of years, but some days I just dwell on it more, and today happened to be one of those days. See, I've been suffering from. See, normally I wear contact lenses. I like to wear contact lenses more than I do glasses, because my prescription is pretty thick, right? And so the glasses are uncomfortable. I can't see as nicely with the glasses as I can with contacts. They can't make the glasses so that I can see well in my peripheries. Everything kind of bends, like a fisheye kind of a thing going on. And when you're training, when you're working out, the glasses get in the way. So a lot of times, if I can't wear my contacts and I'm training with, I got to kind of train blind, because I don't like to wear the glasses. You get sweaty, they're slipping off your face, they're just awkward, right? And so I prefer wearing contacts. But over the summer, latter part of summer, I started getting keratitis issues, where my my cornea was swelling up in my eye, and really, very, very painful and very, very dangerous. So I had to stop wearing contacts for a little bit, and then now I just kind of like put them in when I'm gonna go train or something like that, where I'm gonna go do something physical that I don't want this awkward apparatus on my face. Then I'll wear them. But also, I'm aware of the social stigmas of people wearing glasses. Not that bad, now that I'm getting, the older I get, the more you can get away with wearing glasses. But when I was a kid, I started wearing glasses when I was 6 years old, and as a kid, you know, there's a big stigma against wearing glasses. And I remember very well, the first time I got contact lenses when I was 16, the change, the social change that I underwent just for the simple thing of not having glasses on my face. Started getting dates and all of that stuff. Life completely changed just because I didn't wear glasses. It's like the superhuman thing, where the comic book thing, where the guy, you don't pay any attention to the guy with the glasses, um, and then his alter ego, doesn't have glasses. People can't even recognize him without the glasses. He's so different. That's kind of how people treat you when you go from wearing glasses to not wearing glasses. It's a big difference socially. So I'm aware of that too. So there's always kind of a stigma where I wear glasses. I don't like it. But anyway, I'm stuck with wearing them a lot of the time now, while this keratitis stuff goes away, and who knows if it ever will. But today I've been wearing them all day, and it's been provoking me to dwell a little bit on that issue of how our species is being weakened by technologies, because certainly I think this is one of the ways that it's being weakened by technologies. And to tell you the truth, I think my wife and my daughter and I, none of us would be alive right now if it weren't for technologies. I mean, for different reasons. My daughter was born really, really premature, 2 months premature. My wife has a serious medical condition that requires expensive, high-tech treatment. So none of us would be alive. And I'm not saying that, I'm not against the technology, but I am saying that it is weakening our species. And I think even living in these houses that we live in is weakening our species. When I think it wasn't that long ago here in Blackfoot country where everybody was living in teepees, and you don't actually live in a teepee. It's just kind of like your shelter, right? It's where you sleep, but you don't spend all day indoors and that kind of thing like we do now. We spend a lot of time indoors. We cook ourselves in these spaces because we're in these falsely heated spaces all day long. So what is that doing to our bodies? What is it doing? I wonder, because what I notice is that we can't take the cold very well anymore. We have a little bit of cold and it's very uncomfortable. If we have to go jump in the river in the winter, we might die on the spot because it's so cold for us. Where people in the past, that was the morning ritual, bright and early, not even bright, dawn, dark, get out there, break a hole in the ice, jump in, grab a big rock, jog up the coulee. We're getting ever weaker, and so I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to some of the other technologies. I think that the things that we take to help us live longer medically is one of the areas where we're weak in our species. It's also one of the areas of technologies I most want to keep. If we were to make huge cultural change, I wouldn't want to change the health stuff, because the medicines and the medical equipment and all of that stuff, we're not going to give that up. There's no way we're going to give that up. But what does it mean long term for our species? It means we're going to get weaker and weaker because we're going to continue to pass on um, genes that are inadequate to allow us to survive without those kind of medicines or those kind of technologies and apparatus and such. So there's that area. There's that area of, and then the other thing, another area that I think in technologies that hurts us is our mobility technologies. We're not getting enough cardio. In fact, we're not even getting enough situations, cultural situations where we have to use our body in in ways that are, that test us cardiovascularly. Um, so we drive everywhere, and when we get where we're going, we go inside of a heated place and we sit down. The heat and the cold thing, I think, is huge, because who knows what we're becoming by cooking ourselves all the time in these indoor places. I don't know what kind of creatures we're becoming in doing that, and what's in the future for us. But I do know that if I go into the cold, it's really rough on me. Or for that matter, the really really hot weather. Um, every time it gets really really hot, people die because we can't take it. Um, so again, we're getting weak, but the mobility thing, I think, is huge, and we need to think up cultural ways so that we are getting more mobility. I'm not just talking like, you go out for a jog when you're not working kind of a thing. I think we need to not compartmentalize our lives in that way, where most of our lives are this drudgery indoor work and we get a few hours outside. I think we need to change and get ourselves outside. Get ourselves outside for the vast majority of our daily life. Somehow, that I think that needs to happen for the health of the human race. Um, Other technologies are the ones that deal with our senses, right? So this is the hot and cold thing. The hot and cold. This is the glasses. This is a sensory aid. We have other technologies that shield our senses, like, for instance, our feet, for instance. Um, the shoes that are being produced for people to wear today kind of create a big block, a big void between ourselves and touching the earth. Like, we don't feel the contours of the places that we're walking. We don't feel the little this and that underneath our feet. We're not conscious of it. There's all kind of technologies drawing our awareness away, or dulling our awareness, taking it away, for one thing, from nature. We're no longer aware of nature. The vast majority of us are. We don't pay attention to our environment, our immediate environment. We're not aware all the time of what's going on around us. And this is one thing. But I think also it's dumbing our awareness down. Things like, say, TV, for instance. We pay a lot of attention to TV because it's the one thing that's moving in the house. There's moving images on there, so it draws our attention, because naturally we should be in a world that everything is moving all around us all the time, the outside world, but we're not. So we get the TV, and so of course it draws our attention, but there's just a little bit of hardly any anything worth. It's just one little block to focus our attention on, where and it tells us stories. Beware the rectangle. I say, in all its different forms. All the stories that were told through rectangles are um, they are the things that are being used to mesmerize us, to continue to serve, feed our energy into the work of the machines, basically. Um, so there's all these different ways, but I think it's something we should pay attention to, because as anybody that cares about what it is to be human should be paying attention to this, to the way that technologies affect us, um, and be thinking long term, how are they going to affect us in the future? Because there's guys that use technology for training aids that overuse, um, over rely on technologies for training aids. What if a human being can't get in good shape in the future without the technology stuff? What if you end up needing technology to have good health? um, it's possible, because if you get these guys that that dope up on a lot of steroids, and that becomes really popular, and they're the ones that attract the women and end up producing more kids and all of this stuff, because they seem like the more ideal males and all of this. Not that that's exactly the way things work or anything, but you know just for the sake of discussion, if something like that were to happen, then it's just weakening our species. So I think anybody that's interested in what it is to be a complete human being, and trying to train so that we can move like we're supposed to be able to move as human beings, because we've lost a lot of our capability for movement, and I'm sure that's through technologies. I'm sure that's through technologies get in the way of our using technologies instead of moving, you know, instead of moving ourselves. I think probably the first projectiles, first bows and arrows and those kind of things, or throwing spears and stuff, they probably really played a number on our ability to move, because for that we would have had to chase things down. We would have had to been fast and agile and have a lot of stamina. And once you get a projectile going, then you don't got to do very much at all. And you think about where it's gone to with guns, completely unskilled. You can take a guy into a service, or any kind of academy for guns, and train them to be an efficient shooter in like a couple of weeks tops. They can be efficient. They can be experts within a year if they try. So shooting a gun is for the unskilled. Shooting a projectile from a bow, or throwing a spear, something like that, takes a bit more skill. But imagine the kind of human beings we would be if the hunt we didn't rely on those things. If we had to run down a deer, now we eat cows. The things like stand in place, we can walk right up and grab them. It's ridiculous. So yeah, so this is just what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about technologies, and I think that they're weakening the human species. And I kind of wish sometimes I could get a glimpse. I could like travel back in time to where we were before we made the last really big technological debilitating leap, to see what our ancestors were like, and then what were they like before that, before the technological debility that came before that, and so on. You know, I think what we consider superhuman today is what our ancestors were capable of. And somewhere in there we have some of that code left in us, but it's not all there complete in every person, and I think some of it we've lost. So if we're thinking about the future, if we're thinking about what kind of human beings we want in the future, what kind of human beings we want our grandchildren, grandchildren's grandchildren to be, we need to be thinking about how the technologies we're using are going to affect them. So those are my thoughts.